2,000-year-old Bible revealed a terrifying secret about humanity. Welcome to the latest issue of Enigmatic. A shocking discovery has just rocked the Christian world. An ancient book containing dark secrets has been found. Its content challenges not only every belief that has existed for the past 2,000 years, but also left scientists and historians astonished. Who wrote these mysterious pages? Why was it buried for 2 millennia? And most importantly, what terrifying secrets are hidden within these ancient pages? Let's get ready to explore this Bible with Enigmatic in today. Historians have discovered many ancient books, some of which contain perplexing information, such as stories of strange events in ancient languages that have been forgotten. One of the notable discoveries is an ancient Bible that has just been found in the city of Tokat, Turkey. This special book includes both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Records similar events in the Bible, but from a completely different perspective. For example, it says that Jesus lived and traveled on earth but was never crucified. This is a clear departure from traditional dogma. Biblical scholars acknowledge that there are some minor differences between the texts and authors in the Bible. But there is no text that says Jesus was not crucified. However, that is not all of the shocking revelations. The book contains even more terrifying content. Before we delve into that, we need to know how this book was discovered. It's not an ordinary Bible. It is a book recorded and attributed to Saint Barnabas, a close friend of the Apostle Paul. When a group of antiquities smugglers was caught red-handed, they were trying to transport it along with other precious artifacts with no means at all. The book was made from animal skin, and each page was inscribed with a complex script that was very difficult to copy. This ancient manuscript is written in Syrian, an Aramaic dialect that Jesus may have used is estimated to be worth around $20 million. You may wonder how Jesus could speak Aramaic while all the Gospels were written in Greek. The answer is very simple. The land where Jesus lived had many languages, and everyone was fluent in the common languages of that time, like Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew. After being analyzed by experts, this book is estimated to be around 1,500 years old or possibly older. However, the notable point is not the date, but the next shocking discovery that theological scholars found in the book. This book claims that Jesus was not crucified, but rather Judas was crucified and Jesus ascended to heaven alive. This truly goes beyond what we know about Christianity. But that's not all. Another part of this book also contradicts the Bible as we know it, by declaring that Jesus was not the Son of God, but only a prophet sent by God to convey his words. This book also criticizes the Apostle Paul as an impostor. At this point, you might wonder whether Saint Barnabas, who is believed to be the author of this book, is it Barnabas, the close friend of the Apostle Paul in the Bible? The answer will be revealed right after this. The unbelievable content of this book has caused major controversies within the Christian community. It has attracted the attention of biblical scholars and historians worldwide, to the point that the Vatican has requested to watch it live. However, this statement and many other pieces of information that we will continue to explore is challenging everything we've known for centuries. And the discovery of the book made researchers question its authenticity. Did you know that recently, Tokat, where the book was discovered, has become famous for smuggling mysterious artifacts? This detail became even more evident in 2015, when a painting by artist Vincent van Gogh, Orphaned Man Standing. Turkish police also discovered a collection of expensive jewelry, 53 ancient coins, and 2 arrowheads, although the book's cover was irreparably damaged. But the illustrations inside, decorated with gold leaf, are believed to depict images of Jesus and the Virgin Mary. This book now only has about 50 pages, most of which are still well preserved. Despite signs of slight damage and faded colors, the pages still make a strong impression. To this day, biblical scholars are still working to decode the entire content of the book. However, one thing is certain: scientists have concluded that this book, namely the Epistle of Barnabas, is genuine and not fictional as many mistakenly believe. This raises the question: does church history have 2 different figures named Barnabas? Clearly, church history has recorded two distinct Saint Barnabases, similar to there being 4 to 5 people named so in the New Testament. If another book is discovered tomorrow, we would again need to verify if it is the letter of Zone from Jacob. Let's start with the real Saint Barnabas, the only figure with this name in the Bible. Saint Barnabas, who lived in the 1st century and is commemorated on June 11, was an important Christian missionary, mentioned in the New Testament and regarded as one of the founders of the early church. Originally a Hellenized Jew, Barnabas joined the Jerusalem church shortly after Jesus' crucifixion. He stood out for selling his property and donating all the proceeds to the community. Barnabas was also one of the Cypriots who founded the church in Antioch, where he preached. In 48 AD, Barnabas invited St. Paul from Tarsus to collaborate on missionary work before going to Jerusalem. However, a major conflict later arose, causing Barnabas to leave for Cyprus. Though there is no official record of his activities after this point. A few years later, Paul mentioned Barnabas's death in his letters, but specific details remain unclear. The suffering and martyrdom of Barnabas. Claims he was martyred in Cyprus and buried there. Later, some church fathers suggested he wrote the Epistle of Barnabas analyzing the Old Testament, and might be the author of the Epistle to the Hebrews in the New Testament. Barnabas's tomb is believed to have been excavated in 488 AD near the St. Barnabas Monastery in Salamis, Cyprus, where Paul and Barnabas had built a Christian community. However, it's essential to distinguish the Gospel of Barnabas, the newly discovered one, from the Epistle of Barnabas. Although the Epistle of Barnabas was not included in the Bible, it wasn't due to controversial content, as in this 2,000-year-old book. In fact, there is a strange statement on the last page of the Gospel of Barnabas that astonishes everyone. The Epistle of Barnabas dates to the late 1st century but was likely not written by the Barnabas in the New Testament. Note that even traditional church preservers, when examining these letters, were uncertain. They only speculated that Barnabas could be the author. Although the Epistle of Barnabas has historical value as a pseudonymous work, it was never recognized as part of the Orthodox Bible. The Epistle of Barnabas is an early Christian work, often cited by the early church fathers. Although bearing the name Barnabas, Paul's associate, the letter does not mention the author. This connection was made by commentators such as Clement of Alexandria. Gnosis. However, its content opposes Gnosticism and aligns with early Orthodox Christian beliefs. Although criticized for relying heavily on Old Testament oral traditions and using gematria, biblical mathematics, this text reflects traditional interpretations of faith. The end of the Epistle of Barnabas presents two opposing paths. These comparisons are called the way of light and the way of darkness. The way of light expresses a Jewish perspective on Christian ethics and behavior, while the way of darkness, also called the way of the wicked, relates to Satan. In fact, the early church fathers referenced the Epistle of Barnabas, including Origen, who once thought it was an official work by Barnabas. They found the work useful, though acknowledging it was not divine revelation. The work was attached to some ancient Bible copies, where it could be used as a reference. Although not part of the Bible, the Epistle of Barnabas remains a valuable document. All believers can read online and access a cautious perspective. In contrast, the Gospel of Barnabas did not receive support from the apostles, and was written about 1,000 years after Barnabas' time. This is evident as it is not cited by any church fathers or historians before the 16th century. All books in the New Testament were written before 100 AD. By eyewitnesses or those who interviewed witnesses of Jesus. And the authenticity of the 4 Gospels in the New Testament has never been doubted. Even if the Gospel of Barnabas was written during the Apostles' time, it still did not achieve an official position in the Bible. For example, this gospel claims that Jesus did not declare himself as the Messiah and states that Jesus was born when Pilate was governor, though historical records show Pilate took office in 26 or 27 AD. Furthermore, the Gospel of Barnabas has a rather strange history, suddenly becoming popular in the Muslim community, because it presents a version of Jesus that aligns with the teachings in the Quran. Both texts assert that Jesus did not die on the cross. A belief found in Surah 4 to 157 of the Quran leads some scholars to suspect that the Gospel of Barnabas may have been composed in the 15th-16th centuries by Muslims to discredit the traditional biblical message about Jesus. Why was the Gospel of Barnabas not included in the Bible? The answer is simple. We need to clearly understand how the Bible was formed, what the Gospel of Barnabas is, and the relationship between this Gospel and both the Bible and the Quran. First, the Bible was compiled through many stages. Jewish leaders distinguished the books of the Old Testament around the 2nd century AD. At that time, there were many Christian works, and people were confused between what was Christianity and what was Judaism. Therefore, the Jewish leaders gathered and decided which books would be included in the Bible. Not long after, Christians accepted these books as the Old Testament, in contrast to the New Testament, beginning with the teachings of Jesus and the Last Supper. During that period, many famous books and letters circulated in the Christian community. In response, Christian leaders, called bishops, began compiling lists of suitable books and letters to include in the Bible. Their main criteria were that these books must be written by the apostles, or have long-standing recognition in the church community, and must align with Orthodox Christian teachings. This process took quite some time, but eventually, the bishops reached a consensus on the books of the New Testament that we still recognize today. Although officially established at the Council of Carthage in 692, this list was widely accepted around the mid-4th century. Why is this important? Because adding books to the Bible was not an easy matter. When the New Testament was written, the communities themselves selected all the contents of the Bible based on what was known. If the story in the Gospel of Barnabas were true, they would have deliberately excluded any details of the Gospel of Barnabas and other Gospels to prioritize passages considered more orthodox. And now we return to the Gospel of Barnabas. The inexplicable things cannot be explained. So, what in the Gospel of Barnabas astonishes scholars and archaeologists? From the beginning, the Gospel of Barnabas calls Jesus the Christ. God has visited us in these days through the prophet Jesus Christ, page 2. However, as the story continues, Jesus denies being the Messiah. Jesus confessed and spoke the truth, I am not the Messiah. Chapter 42. So how could it happen that Jesus is the Christ but denies being the Messiah, when these two terms mean the same thing? Christ. The author even suggested that Jesus was referring to someone else as the Messiah. But who is that person? Could it be Peter, Paul, or John the Baptist? In fact, if it could be some biblical figure, it would be more noteworthy. Prepare yourself, because you are about to hear something very surprising. Chapter 3 of this book mentions King Herod and Governor Pontius Pilate appearing together in Judea during the time of Jesus' birth. This is completely untrue, as Herod and Pilate never appeared together in Judea. Next, in chapters 20 and 21, this book describes Jesus sailing to Nazareth and being warmly welcomed by the people there before continuing to Capernaum. However, this is a major error because Nazareth is not a fishing village, but is located about 14 kilometers from the Sea of Galilee in the mountainous region. This shows that the author may not have been familiar with the geography of 1st century Palestine. First, the author of the Gospel of Barnabas also describes 9 heavens before reaching heaven. Heaven is so great that no one can measure it. Indeed, I tell you that there are 9 heavens, in which the planets are separated by 500 years of human travel. And truly I tell you, heaven is greater than all the earth and the heavens combined, not 178. Paradise Journey. Before Dante, no one had described 9 heavens like this.
Could the author of the Gospel of Barnabas have been inspired by Dante?
If we accept the hypothesis that it was written before the 14th century, it should have been found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But the Gospel of Barnabas is not present in those scrolls. You might feel angry thinking that.
Christian believers often struggle with apparent contradictions in the Bible,
such as the concept of the Trinity or the return of Jesus, which makes them wrestle with opposing ideas. However, it should also be noted that similar tensions appear in Islam. However, some scholars offer different reasons.
They argue that the Gospel of Barnabas might have been excluded because there is no record of his death in the scriptures.
He is the only saint whose death is not mentioned in the Bible. Is this true? This is similar to the case of Enoch in his book. Dark Hidden Secrets. History records that humans evolved from primitive hunters into advanced civilizations, building pyramids, designing calendars, and leaving behind ancient texts. And they continue to develop to this day.
However, the story of the sudden transformation of ancient creatures,
like giants with tails and extraordinary intelligence, is not merely human evolution. The Book of Enoch revealed that there is much hidden behind it.
In 1946, a group of teenagers were herding goats near the ancient settlement of Qumran, which is in the West Bank region. To pass the time, they threw stones and explored a desert area.
During one stone throw, a stone fell into a dark cave,
creating a loud crash that startled the teenagers.
Though a bit scared, curiosity drove them to explore, and they discovered a collection of large clay jars. They did not know that this discovery held great historical significance. Inside these jars were ancient scrolls. Over time, archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters found more scroll fragments in 10 different caves,
totaling nearly 900 manuscripts. These manuscripts later became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Notably, among these manuscripts were large portions of a mysterious religious text.
The Book of Enoch, the oldest copies of the Hebrew Bible, and non-biblical artifacts.
The Book of Enoch dates back to around 200 BC, and its true author remains unidentified.
But it is believed to be the work of multiple authors over hundreds of years, with each part added separately.
However, it is traditionally attributed to Enoch, the biblical ancestor of Noah, who is said to have been taken up to heaven by God and saw the universe and the future of humanity. Enoch is one of the 10 patriarchs who lived before the flood in the book of Genesis, and you can refer to this passage in the book of Jude chapter 1 verses 14 to 15.
Although Enoch is the father of Methuselah and the grandfather of Noah, this book is not the story of Noah's Ark in the Bible.
On the contrary, the Book of Enoch tells a completely different story. This book consists of 5 parts.
The Book of the Watchers, the Parables of Enoch,
the Astronomical Book,
the Book of Dreams, and the Epistle of Enoch. The first part, the Book of the Watchers, is the main part of this story, telling how the giants, also known as the Nephilim, were born. According to this book, these giants are the descendants of some fallen angels. The scrolls found in the cave indicate that the fallen angels, also called the Watchers, were sent to Earth to monitor humans at some point in ancient history. However, over time, they neglected their monitoring role and began to have sexual relations with some people, mainly women, giving birth to hybrid creatures we know today as Nephilim. These Nephilim are described as giants, wild, and posing a threat to humanity. However, compared to ordinary people, they possessed superior intelligence inherited from the fallen angels. Angered by what the Watchers had done, God imprisoned these fallen angels in an underground prison. As recorded in 1 Enoch 21:10, they violated God's command and were imprisoned. This place is the prison of the angels, where they will be held forever. Enoch became the mediator between God and the imprisoned Watchers, but nothing changed.
The scrolls describe in detail Enoch's journeys between heaven and earth as a mediator.
How he flew with the angels and saw rivers, mountains, and even the ends of the earth from above. Although Enoch intervened, Jehovah decided that the earth and all living beings on it must be punished. That punishment was the Great Flood. You might ask if the fallen angels were imprisoned. What about their descendants, the Nephilim? Were they destroyed? Unfortunately, no. While their fathers were in prison, the fate of their children was different.
Before the flood occurred, everything was chaotic. The Nephilim caused all kinds of evil, and humans had to fight against evil every day. The righteous people living during that time had to live in hardship, with their souls constantly disturbed by the wrath of evil. During this chaotic period, God decided to cleanse the earth with a great flood.
You might be familiar with this famous story, right? The devastating flood wiped out all life on earth, leaving only Noah and everything he carried on his ark. But did the Nephilim die in the flood? Actually, after the flood, everything took a different turn. The Nephilim were a strange species.
They were hybrid creatures, which explains their extraordinary development, supernatural abilities, and even their immortality.
When the floodwaters receded and their bodies were gone, the Nephilim, not being human, could not continue the path like human souls after death. So they still wandered the earth as spirits, unable to live as humans anymore. They began to search for human bodies to continue influencing the world. And would you believe it, they succeeded. These spirits didn't take long to find. They entered the bodies of people like Noah. This might surprise you, but pay a little attention. Before the great flood occurred, Noah was known as a righteous man, living uprightly in a world full of sin. However, after the great flood passed, an unexpected change occurred. Noah planted a vineyard and then drank wine to the point of losing control and committed shameful acts. Some people believe that in Noah's ark, one of his sons was actually a Nephilim. Before you deny or think this story is just a meaningless myth, think again. Even in the Bible, the Nephilim are mentioned many times.
In the book of Numbers chapter 13 verse 33, 10 out of 12 spies,
they had seen these giant creatures living in Canaan. They were described as so large that they made the Israelites look like grasshoppers.
You can also see terms like fallen angels, Nephilim, or giants in the book of Ezekiel chapter 32 verse 27. As well as in deuterocanonical books such as Judges chapter 16 verse 6, Wisdom 14-6, Sirach 16-7, and Baruch 3:26-28.
So what about the famous Goliath in the Bible? You might have heard the story of Goliath billions of times.
He was a giant standing 3 meters tall and nearly 2 meters wide, belonging to the Nephilim lineage. Besides his giant size, he was almost like a living bronze.
Goliath wore a bronze helmet, bronze leg armor, and carried a bronze spear.
If you think Goliath was the only giant in the Bible, you're mistaken.
In fact, Goliath's battle was not the first time Israel faced giants. When they moved from Achab to Canaan, they encountered these giant beings. Canaan was a land of giant races, people over 3 meters tall and nearly 2 meters wide. The Israelites had to fight them and eventually won before claiming Canaan as their land.
But the story is even more interesting than that.
The Bible also records that
They met another giant, Mohawk of Asen, a man who was 4.5 meters tall.
he was so gigantic
But he needed a special bag to contain him.
you could call him a monster. Read Deuteronomy chapter 31 for more details.
And if you study the Bible more closely, you will realize that Goliath had 5 giant brothers and a son.
If he exists, we wouldn't. In reality, these giant beings still exist somewhere, perhaps even in modern society. Throughout human history, there have been numerous records of giants. One famous explorer, Marco Polo, documented encounters with giant races in Zanzibar. They had such great strength that they could easily carry 4 ordinary people. In Tangier, Morocco, the locals say that the founder of their city was a giant named Antix. An Icelandic legend tells of a giant named Finn Mark Kuhn, who built a giant stone bridge across the sea to fight another giant in Scotland. Besides these legends, Greek mythology also has many stories about giants.
If these giant beings truly existed like ancient Greek civilizations,
then perhaps the Book of Enoch is not just a mythical tale but a work based on real historical events. Who knows if the heroes and giants we admire today with extraordinary traits might be the descendants of these angelic human beings. There is also a legend that Enoch was the founder of astronomy and the one who compiled the solar calendar along with many other inventions. It is surprising to learn that such an important book was excluded from the Bible.
Many people believe that the Book of Enoch influenced Genesis because the stories in it have many similarities.
But why is that? Should we discard this book just because it doesn't fit our understanding of the Bible, or does it truly have value? The next question is, why are these books only being discovered now?
History shows that during periods of persecution, these religious books were suppressed.
In 64 AD, Emperor Nero blamed Christians for the fire in Rome. Later, in 303 AD, Emperor Diocletian ordered the seizure and burning of biblical books. Even during the Middle Ages, from 500 to 1500 AD, books were burned along with their owners. And literacy in general was banned. This explains why such books were hidden from the eyes of the powerful and the public for many years. Currently, we are rediscovering the books of two figures whose deaths are not recorded in the Bible. Those who were removed from the Holy Book. Is this just a coincidence? Or is there something greater than we imagine? The Whisper of the Gospel.
The sayings in the Gospel of Thomas often take the form of enigmatic wisdom, encouraging reflection and contemplation. Some sayings in it have similarities with passages in the canonical Gospels,
while others offer a completely different perspective on spirituality and the nature of the divine.
One of the notable sayings in the Gospel of Thomas is saying 77, where Jesus says,
"I am the light that shines on all things, I am all. From me all things arise and all things return to me. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift a stone, and you will find me there."
This saying reflects the belief in the presence of the divine in all creation,
a perspective that differs from mainstream Christian doctrines. Another interesting aspect of the Gospel of Thomas is its emphasis on self-discovery and inner transformation. In saying 70, Jesus says,
"If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you cannot bring forth will destroy you." This emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and living authentically to realize what one desires.
This somewhat contradicts the theme of faith emphasized in the Bible.
Although the Gospel of Thomas was not included in the official Bible,
its discovery has highlighted the complexity of early Christian history, particularly the diversity in beliefs and practices among early Christian communities.
The Bible is an important document, the best-selling book of all time, with over 6 billion copies sold.
Therefore, if we want to add books to it, new books need to have their accuracy verified. Otherwise, we only add more confusion to humanity. The Bible does not specify how Barnabas died, but documents indicate he was martyred for his faith, like many other apostles. It is said that he was either stoned or burned alive in Salamis, Cyprus. In Acts chapter 15 verse 11, Barnabas and Paul preached an encouraging message in the city of Antioch, before a disagreement caused them to part ways. This conflict arose when they could not agree on whether to bring John Mark along, as he had abandoned them previously. So Barnabas took his cousin John Mark and set sail for Cyprus, while Paul teamed up with Silas and continued his journey through Syria and Cilicia. However,
Paul later said something quite interesting.
In his letter to the Galatians, Paul strongly criticized his friend and missionary colleague, claiming that even Barnabas was led astray by hypocrisy.
Could it be that Barnabas was unable to return to the right path and wrote this book from a mistake?
Although this might be true for Barnabas, Enoch always lived righteously with God, and God himself confirmed it.
Therefore, it is impossible for Enoch to have written distorted texts.
So what should we believe?
It is unrealistic to demand a book to have perfect accuracy when it has existed for over 2,000 years,
and was written by humans during a turbulent period of war and terror. Moreover, how can we distinguish between the Bible and just an ordinary book? Just because a book is ancient doesn't mean its content is true. because lies can also easily be written on paper.
Don't forget that many writers of that time opposed the Christian movement.
So that book might just be someone's diary.
Don't forget, after watching, click the subscribe button to Beyond the Veil 0707 channel so you know. Thank you for watching the entire video and see you next time.